Ben. It's been a while, right?
Yeah, it has.
Well, we're looking at, 8 years?
Yeah,
Since you're back at
started 8 years ago, yeah.
2011, right? 2011 September.
Must have been, yeah. That's a long time.
It was a long time. And it's changed a lot, right? From when you first
from renting different gyms out to getting our own court and building a program from scratch. It's been quite a journey.
Did you miss the first? You didn't ever play it, right?
Yeah, I played here. Yeah, my last year I was here for a little bit.
End of that year, right?
Yeah.
So midway through 2013, that's when.
I caught the last bit of this building. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you put a little bit of a legacy on it.
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
So let's go right back. How did you start? What happened? Because our paths kind of crossed whilst we were here.
Yeah.
I guess Michael Ball was the first one that you met.
Yeah.
How did that happen? When did it happen?
Well, I was a rugby player back when I was in Hitchin Boys School, which was secondary. And
what position did you play rugby?
I was in the backs, so I was the small position. I was the fly half or the full back. It was the thinking position, and I got a bit too tall. I was like 6'6" at the time, and they were like, "Oh, you should probably move into the scrum, get your ears turned inside out." And I was like, I'm a bit nah. So I played a little bit of just fun basketball at school, you know, at a very amateur level, and I just thought, why not, give it a go. So I came to Oakland's actually looking at both programs, and then Michael, he's a master with his words, and he persuaded me and my mum very quickly that this could be like a really viable option for me. Then we got into it. You remember we were over at Gosling Park, and there was a small close-knit group that I was turning up to, and I clearly didn't know what I was doing. I turned up in rugby gear and stuff, and
high socks.
High socks. So it was quite an experience, and obviously we met like halfway through the year, and that's kind of when it changed for me. It was still a little bit of fun. Michael, obviously being the director of basketball for the whole program, he's got off doing various things because he's obligated to, and we would always be, as the close-knit group, we were always there playing pick-up scrimmages 5-on-5, but when you came, that's really when it changed into more of a performance program in terms of you focusing on individuals and as a team, more of a direction for us.
Let's go back to when you sat with your mum and Michael, and I'm sure it was at least 4-hour long chat, right? Something like that. What sort of things did you discuss about what Oakland's could be for you? What could it do for you?
He just kind of opened my eyes, because I knew I was a tall kid, but I didn't realize how far I could take it. And he was discussing ACE, and he was discussing the opportunities of going to Denmark, and the opportunities that would be out there in terms of the national team at the youth level, which I didn't think I would be even close to. And just showing me how he can market me and how I wouldn't be this normal player. He saw me as more than that from a very early stage, and he wasn't wrong.
So I came kind of November in 2011. So you were already here, you were kind of my first generation of player, and we'd had 2 years previously, so there's no basketball at Oakland's before 2009, when Michael came up here. And as you found out, me and Michael had a working relationship beforehand, and that's why he brought me up in 2011. But my memories was, I was going from my previous academy, which I built up, and I came up here and I walked into that lovely green gym in Gosling, and like you said, that little tight-knit group of people, but you couldn't pick a more random group of so-called basketball players getting together. And there you were, this thing in, I don't know, what were you, 6'7" at some, 6'8" maybe?
Yeah, maybe at that time,
something like that. Which is mental, because you think that you've grown another 4 or 5 inches since that moment, through to when you went off to the States. Beanpole.
Super skinny.
Super skinny. But the biggest thing that jumped out to me was two things, and then first was your ability to coordinate in this sport when you hadn't had a lot of time in it, and that was really impressive early on, and that makes sense in terms of your other multi-sport background. But in rugby, you're saying already you did the skill positions, and that makes sense because your coordination is very good, irrelevant of your size. But the biggest thing is your eagerness to learn and your ability to learn. You just soak stuff up really quickly, and it became pretty obvious pretty early on that investing our time in you was gonna pay dividends for you. So what do you remember of our first meeting?
I think, well, they're very initially. Obviously, we were as a group, and you saw us, and you came in, and I remember as a team, we did some exercises, and you were doing drills with us, and you were like, "Go as hard as you can," and we all thought we did, and then you like went and helped us reevaluate ourselves and made us realize that there's so much more that we can still give. And I guess even within that small practice, where it was 30 or an hour, you were evaluating everyone individually, and that's when you must have picked me out. And then when we did our very first session, it was literally breaking down a jump shot. Like, when you saw me, like, I didn't know how to shoot the ball. It was like netball. Like, I had no idea. Yeah. So you went with me. You broke down the mechanics from where it starts at the ankles all the way up to the touch of your fingertips. And so when people now watch me and they say, like, you've got such a natural looking shot, I'm like, you have no idea.
Yeah, nothing natural about starting at 15 and a half.
Yeah, right.
But this goes back to what I said about your ability to learn. I mean, you just soaked it up, and it was one of the most impressive things about you, Ben, is that we even today we're getting into such small little details now when we're doing our workouts these days. But when we work on those details, you own them. You take them straight away, and you're running with them. And I might not see you again until the next summer, mm-hmm. but you come back and you remember exactly where we left off, and you've worked on the things in between. And then we're able to just build and layer. We always have been. Yeah. So it's really good. So even though you started from such a small base, I think the rise of Ben Lawson and how quickly it happened over those 2 years is massively down to the fact that you had some coordination as a big guy beforehand, mm-hmm. but your ability to learn.
Yeah, I've got to put that down to my mum. Yeah. She was obviously very busy, single mum, and that kind of background. But she just threw me into sports. I did everything from gymnastics to tennis, so individual and team sports with rugby and football, and yeah, I had to do everything and learn everything, and then I got to choose what I wanted in terms of my priorities and stuff. And I think just because of that, I can bring in the footwork. Like, you don't see many big men that have twinkle toes, and I do all right for myself.
So going back, if you were to tell another young Ben Lawson coming through at kind of 8, 9, 10 years old, would it be that you wish you would have focused on basketball from that age? Would it be continue to be multi-sport but add basketball to it? What would be your thing now, or do exactly as you did?
I would definitely say be multi-sport, but you can never force a kid to want to play basketball. That has to be an inner passion of himself. I think with me, like, my main love was rugby, but then it developed into like a competitiveness and a love of sport in terms of the camaraderie and all that what else is entailed in it. And I think that's what I really found that I loved. It wasn't as much as the individual sport. I've always got rugby is in my heart, and so is basketball now. And but it's everything else about the sporting backgrounds that draw me in, you know.
Yeah. And that's a good little segue to talk about it when we start to talk about your game, because ever since day one, we've got this 6'8" skinny beanpole kid come in the gym. Two things. One, we never saw you as an inside back to the basket guy.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you can talk about it in a little bit, but it's not really in your mentality to be a beat you up bruiser, and it definitely wasn't at the start, despite playing rugby, despite coming from that background. So you could handle yourself, but it wasn't part of something you wanted to do.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I could always take a hit. Like when I was on defense, I never had an issue with someone initiating contact. But yeah, like you said, it was never my intention to always be like a muscle guy that just tries to overpower people. In the sport of rugby, I was always kind of a finesse guy, trying to trick people with trick plays and trying to make like the fancy pass or something. And I don't know, like, it kind of translated nicely into basketball, where I was more of a skill player that developed like a pleasing to the eye kind of game, I guess.
Yeah, and then the second part that was obvious was you were such a team guy. Like you were saying before, it's the love of sport that you can get from a team ethic, and sometimes to your detriment. We would always have multiple conversations about how to be more selfish, how to do more things for yourself, but those qualities have stuck with you, and I think every single coach and teammate that you ever have really appreciates you for those things. So do you think that's just because you want to be part of a group more than you want to be part of yourself, or?
I know a lot of people say it, but I think genuinely, like, seeing success of a team, I find more pleasing than my own success. And like you said, that's been a detriment to me, because with the sport you're always trying to get to the next level, and that's always leaving behind a team or leaving behind a situation to go to the next one. And there's a lot of guys that are thinking narrow-mindedly, like, about themselves and how they're going to get to the next spot, and that's in the back of my mind, but that's never really at the forefront. It's always like, what can I do for this team now? And like you said, I've had multiple conversations with multiple people about trying to not necessarily be more selfish, but just find a good balance. And especially in when I went to university in America, that was a tough thing for me, because it is all about getting to that next level. And I went there a little inexperienced still, didn't have enough minutes under my belt, and so it took me some time to get used to that idea that we are a team and we do need to do this together, but at the same time, like, you could be the best option to help the team to go into the right direction. And it was only when I became a pro that it started kind of clicking for me. And you can see if you follow my stats and my history, my journey, but like right now, I think I'm at a really good place where I've found that balance, and I think it's starting to show.
Yeah, definitely. Part of that is confidence, right? As you get better within the sport, you feel more confident that you can be a guy, you can be somebody that's going to lead a team and help a team in ways that you can individually, not just the other stuff. But what I love about your stats and people that follow your journey, you never stop with the other stuff. You still get your assist numbers, you still get your team blocks, your team defensive stuff that doesn't show up on the main box score. You're willing to make the extra pass, willing to find the great shot in an offense and all those sort of things. So you don't see that as the highlight stuff as much, and it doesn't get talked about in some of the media coverage and things that have you. But I know that all your teammates and coaches are really grateful for you for that stuff.
Yeah, I think just morally, I find it hard not to make the right play in a possession. Like, everybody knows once you got to a certain level, if someone's being selfish when they take a shot or they're giving it up for the better shot. And I think just morally and just the way I've been brought up around sport, I think that's just the way that I've always been. And I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't always try and get the best shot for the team.
I remember back kind of early on in that first year when we started to put you forward for national teams, and I was a national team coach at the time, so I had a good conversation with the coaches on the guys' side and with Steve Buck and those guys, and talking about you, and we said about some of your strengths and weaknesses. But I think that kind of run that you ended up going in with that 95 group was because of the complement you had. So you had Cavell at the other end, and so the two of you could play together. So instead of just being limited in a situation where you just had one big man on a national team, which is, we're lucky if we can get it. You guys were lucky you had two, and you guys could run together.
Yeah, and it changed, because the first year that we really connected at the under-20s, I was the 5 and he was the 4. Because, I mean, he's very athletic and moves well, but they recognised by the second year that it was more of an advantage for my passing ability and the other areas, and he was so dominant inside that when they flipped it, it almost made it even smoother, which was really nice.
As part of that, if I remember as well, it was pretty early on. I mean, we started working on your jump shot mechanics and looking at that, and said that you're going to be a high skill guy. Shooting, you definitely had the ability to do it, even though you didn't have the technique. Do you remember how early it was that I threw you behind the 3-point line?
I want to say it was a long time, because I feel like we were by the rim a lot, but you always like to explore and be adventurous, so you could have put me back there pretty early on, to be honest. Yeah.
I can't remember myself, but I know.
We had a good 2 weeks of literally just ankles, flow of the energy and touch. I remember that. But
that's so funny. 2 weeks. I mean, 2 weeks is nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
You think about other players, you're talking about 2 years to be able to get to that stage.
Yeah, but we were going every morning.
It's the Ben Lawson effect. We could get that stuff done in 2 weeks. So yeah, I remember us moving out. I definitely remember when we started to get around there, and we're doing as it is with most of these situations with guys with some size. There's not a lot of you in this environment. So I remember we were doing workouts, and we had some morning workouts at the uni, and I was making you go with all the guards and doing like 2-minute 3-point shooting drills and Memphis stuff like that, and getting you to do measure yourself against these tiny guards that are running all over the place, jacking up 100 threes and putting numbers up. But you never stopped. You never wavered. You never looked at it as a negative. You just continued to work.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys. It might be a blessing that I came into the sport late because I knew I was at the bottom, and that's kind of how my journey's been, is always at the bottom and then find my way up. If guys started high up and then they start seeing a bit of struggle when other players are coming up, then I could see how that could maybe slow their progress and alter their mindset. But being with you and I was at the very bottom and I didn't know anything, and so I was just soaking everything up, and then we built something from that. It might have made it easier. But I don't know, who's to say that if I hadn't started playing when I was 4, like a lot of the Americans, where I would be now,